Hello and welcome. Today you will see how skilled workers make a useful mud pot from raw clay. First, they mix the clay with water using shovels until it becomes smooth and ready for shaping. The workers carefully prepare the mud mixture to create strong and durable pottery. Clay pot making began thousands of years ago in ancient civilizations, when women first started shaping wet clay by hand for daily household use. They created pots to store water, cook food, keep grains safe, and carry liquids. Before metal and plastic existed, clay pottery was one of the most important inventions for human survival. Over time, this traditional skill was passed from one generation to another and is still used in many villages and factories today. This 90-year-old craftsman still makes more than 50 clay pots every single day with incredible skill and precision. He has spent his entire life working with clay and learning every part of this traditional pottery process through years of experience and hard work. From preparing the raw clay to shaping and finishing each pot by hand, he performs every step with remarkable speed and accuracy. Despite his old age, he continues working daily and keeps this ancient tradition alive. Now, he is teaching the younger generation so they can learn these valuable skills and continue the clay pot making tradition in the future. You might wonder why these workers do not use modern machines in today's advanced era. The reason is that they do not operate a large factory, and there is not a very high demand for these traditional clay pots anymore. Most of these pots are mainly used in villages and rural areas, where people still prefer traditional handmade pottery for daily use. Because of the limited demand, using expensive modern machinery would not be practical for them. Instead, they continue making the pots completely by hand to earn their livelihood and keep this centuries-old tradition alive. For these skilled craftsmen, pottery is not just a business, but also an important part of their culture and heritage that they want to pass on to the next generation. As the pottery wheel spins rapidly, the worker carefully shapes the neck and upper body of the clay pot, using only his hands. The circular rings around the pot are made by applying gentle pressure, while the wet clay rotates smoothly. This process helps create an even shape, stronger structure, and traditional design before the pot is left for drying. The worker is using a precise handmade tool to create smooth decorative lines and custom designs on the clay pot while it spins on the wheel. As the soft clay rotates continuously, even a small movement of the tool can completely change the shape and pattern of the surface. The carefully made circular designs give the pot a clean traditional appearance and make the finishing process look extremely satisfying. When the final product is completed, the clay pot looks beautifully shaped, smooth and perfectly balanced, showing the impressive result of this detailed handmade process. If the workers transfer the pots directly into strong sunlight right after shaping, the soft clay can lose its shape, crack, or collapse during lifting and movement. That is why they first allow the pots to partially dry and gain enough hardness before carefully transferring them outside into the sunlight for the final drying process. Now a young trainee is preparing to create a new clay pot during his training process. Before starting, he keeps pressing and kneading the clay again and again. The purpose of this step is to make the clay completely smooth, soft, and evenly mixed while removing any hard mud particles, small stones, or trapped air from inside the clay. If the clay is not prepared properly, hard particles inside the mixture can damage the surface and disturb the shape of the pot during the making process. It can also create rough marks and defects that take much more time to fix later. That is why properly kneading and preparing the clay is a very important step before creating a new clay pot. This traditional skill is not usually taught in schools or universities. Most workers learn it through practical experience by joining pottery workshops as junior helpers or trainees. In the beginning, they spend long hours observing senior workers, practicing daily, and doing physically hard work to improve their skills. During training, they often receive very little payment because they are still learning, similar to an internship or apprenticeship system. It is amazing to see how these craftsmen create such beautiful and satisfying clay pots using completely manual methods. With one foot, the worker continuously rotates the pottery wheel, while both hands and fingers carefully shape the soft clay into a perfectly balanced design. Every small hand movement changes the shape, thickness, and decorative lines of the pot, making the entire process look extremely satisfying to watch. The speed of the wheel is also controlled manually by foot pressure. Sometimes the wheel rotates faster, and sometimes slower, depending on the shape and design they want to create. If an electric motor were used instead, the wheel might rotate too fast or unevenly, which could damage the delicate design, create blurry patterns, or make the shape too deep and unbalanced. That is why this traditional manual control gives a smoother, more natural, and more precise result. Even though this work requires patience, hand control, timing balance, and years of practical learning, many traditional craftsmen are still not properly recognized as highly skilled workers in the modern era. Today, machine-made products dominate the market, while handmade crafts often receive less attention despite the incredible manual skill and effort involved in creating them. Now the trainee has learned how to create a properly shaped clay pot with a balanced layout and smooth finishing. After spending nearly 1 year practicing daily, he has developed enough skill to start small-scale pottery work on his own and possibly open a small workshop or family business in the future. Most of these workers learn everything through practical experience instead of formal education or professional training institutes. Although they become highly skilled in handmade pottery, many of them do not have the financial resources, business knowledge, or modern equipment needed to start large-scale production factories. Because of limited demand and simple living conditions, most traditional pottery workers continue living modest lives while earning their income through handmade craftsmanship. Even with years of hard work and valuable skills, many of these craftsmen remain connected to small local markets and traditional village businesses rather than expanding into large commercial industry. When the workers finish making hundreds of clay pots, the next amazing process begins after the pots are completely dried under sunlight. Even after drying, the clay pots are still not fully strong or ready for use, because the material can still break easily under pressure. To turn the dried clay into a strong and durable final product, the pots must go through an intense heating process inside a traditional kiln. During this stage, hundreds of clay pots are carefully arranged together before being exposed to extremely high temperatures that can reach nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius. This firing process completely changes the structure of the clay, making the pots much harder, stronger, and more durable for daily use. Watching hundreds of handmade clay pots being heated together inside the kiln is one of the most amazing and satisfying parts of the entire pottery making process. Now the workers are carefully placing hundreds of dried clay pots layer by layer inside the traditional firing area where the heating process will take place. Every pot must be arranged properly with enough spacing, because poor placement can cause cracking or damage during the high-temperature firing process. After arranging all the pots, they begin heating them using a very traditional method instead of modern gas-powered systems. Wood, dry leaves, coal, and other natural fuels are slowly burned to create intense heat inside the kiln. The temperature gradually increases over many hours until the clay pots become fully hardened and transformed into strong final products. This traditional firing process requires constant attention because uneven heat can damage the pottery. Once the heating is completed, the pots cannot be removed immediately because they remain extremely hot. The entire kiln is then left closed for nearly 2 days, so the clay pots can cool down slowly and safely. If they are removed too early, sudden temperature changes can create cracks and ruin the final products. The total expenses of the complete pottery making process can become very high when all costs are included, such as raw clay, fuel for heating, transportation, labor work, drying space, kiln preparation, and the risk of damaged products during firing. In some cases, the overall investment for large production batches can reach thousands of dollars. Even after spending so much time, hard work, and money, the final profit is still uncertain. The workers never know exactly how many pots will sell successfully in the market or how much profit they will earn in return. Sometimes demand is low, transportation costs increase, or some pots break during the heating and delivery process, causing financial losses. Unlike large modern factories with guaranteed buyers and advanced machinery,